Hi, my name is Mindy, and this is my presentation on self-regulation. Little bit of background about myself. I have been a special ed teacher for 13 years, and I have taught mostly kindergarten, first grade. I've done second grade a couple years. There was about 4 years that I taught in a self-contained special ed classroom. So it was a variety of ages. They were students that had multiple and severe disabilities. So it was a functional life skills type of class. But for the most part, I have been doing resource support. This year currently I am doing resource for kindergarten. I've got all kindergarten students. I do a lot of push-in, a lot of co-teaching with the kindergarten teacher, and then some small group pull out and some intervention services as well. So like I said, this is about self-regulation and what it looks like in the early childhood classroom and how to teach it. What is self-regulation? Self-regulation can also be called self-control, anger management, or impulse control. It is the ability to control one's own behavior, thoughts, and emotions. It's being able to stop and think before doing any sort of action. So, for example, stopping yourself from eating an entire bag of chips, which we know we shouldn't be doing, stopping yourself from hitting a coworker who has come in and bothered you for the 100th time that day, or working on a paper or presentation for school when it is 75 and sunny outside and you really just want to be outside. We realize the importance of each of these actions, and we're able to control our emotions, keep them in check, and control our thoughts and behave in ways that are socially appropriate or socially acceptable. Self-regulation also means being able to alter your own behaviors, your own thoughts, your own emotions and actions according to your current situation. So, for example, pretend you are planning a night out with your significant other. It has been months and months since you've been out. You really need a night out. You made reservations. You bought a nice outfit. You have spent the last hour getting ready to go. And 10 minutes before it's time to leave, he or she calls you and says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I have to work. I can't go. We're going to have to cancel." Now, what do? You get mad, you hang up your phone, you throw it across the room, it shatters into a million pieces, you rip your clothes out of frustration, and you spend the entire night crying into a gallon bucket of ice cream. If you have appropriate self-regulation skills, which hopefully we all do, instead of acting like that, you instead kind of shrug your shoulders, brush it off, say, "Oh, things happen." Maybe call up a friend and say, "Hey, let's go out and have a good time." So in other words, you don't let that situation completely control you and overtake things. Self-regulation is important in the classroom for many reasons. Self-regulation does not have to look this extreme. Those were pretty extreme examples. In the classroom, a student is self-regulating by listening to the teacher, by working quietly, by transitioning between activities, ignoring the buzzing of the fluorescent lights, ignoring their neighbor tapping on their pencil on their desk. When a conflict arises, he or she is able to handle that appropriately or ask for help in handling it. Students who are not able to self-regulate will have difficulty coping, and they may start displaying some inappropriate behaviors. And, some behaviors may be pretty mild, but they also may be pretty severe as well. Self-regulation requires 3 critical neurological components, and those are sensory processing, executive functioning, and emotional control. Sensory processing is how you receive and respond to the information coming in through your senses. So, for example, let's say you are baking cookies and you smell them burning. The smell is relayed to your brain to be interpreted, and then you determine if this smell is something that you must attend to or filter out. Smelling burning cookies is obviously something we should attend to, so our brain then tells our body to react by going into the kitchen and taking them out of the oven before they burn any further. So it's deciding to do something and then acting purposefully to that sensory input. Sensory processing is also how you regulate the amount of sensory input coming in to avoid becoming overstimulated. So, for example, when you are lost, when you're driving and you get lost, a lot of people tend to turn the radio down or turn it off. That's because you are regulating your senses. You are reducing one sense, or so in this case, your sense of hearing, in order to focus more on another. Difficulties in self-regulation can result from people not being able to filter out all of that extraneous stimuli, or being overly sensitive to small amounts of sensation that most other people wouldn't find offensive or wouldn't even notice. In the classroom, this would appear as a student not being able to concentrate on work or on what the teacher is saying, because he can't filter out all of those background noises or all of everything that's going on around him. So, he can't focus, or he can't filter out the buzzing of the lights or the tapping of the pencil, or kids in the hallway, or just, everyday small noises that we hear in the classroom. This could result in sensory overload, and he may act out or become frustrated because of it. On the other hand, you have students who are sensory seeking, and they need some sort of sensory input. They're not getting enough sensory input from the world around them, so they need more in order to focus or pay attention. This is someone who needs movement, who needs deep pressure in order to focus, and if she's not getting that, then it could result in some actions that may not be appropriate for those around her, and things that are disruptive, like crawling around on the carpet during circle time or getting out of her chair frequently. Executive functioning is another one of those critical components we need for self-regulation. Executive functioning is being able to manage oneself and your resources in order to achieve a goal. So we as adults use executive functioning when we are planning a vacation, when we are going to the grocery store, making out a list, going to the grocery store, when we're working on a project for work. Children use executive functioning when they're organizing their desks, organizing their binders, organizing their book bags, when they are going through the steps in order to get a project done or a worksheet done, an activity done. Preschoolers may use executive functioning when they're putting a puzzle together, or when they are trying to follow the directions on how to clean up a center and where to go next. The parts of executive functioning that are vital to self-regulation are attention shifting, working memory, self-talk, flexible thinking, planning, and impulse control. When the processes of executive functioning are working appropriately, you are better able to regulate to the world around you. If they're not working appropriately, then you may have problems with self-regulation. So, for example, a student who has problems with attention shifting may not be able to do two things at once. So may not be able to listen to the teacher and take notes at the same time. or, listen to the teacher's directions and get something out of his pencil box to start the next activity. Someone who doesn't have flexible thinking may have difficulty considering different multiple options for an action or a behavior. And that kind of goes along with impulse control. They can't see that there's other ways to respond to something, so they're just impulsively going to respond to the first thing that comes in their head. Emotional regulation is the ability to control emotional reactions to meet a goal. Emotions are something that's automatically triggered in response to an event. We all have emotions about any sort of event that happens in our life. Your ability to control and regulate these emotions is what determines the outcome of most events. So for example, you walk into school and the first thing that happens is your boss yells at you. Of course, you're going to have emotions that are automatically triggered by this. How you respond is going to determine how the rest of your day goes. So you get yelled at, you can choose to ignore it and, move on with your day, and your day will go a lot better than if you reacted negatively to that and maybe yelled back or, slammed your stuff in frustration or walked out. That those two are going to have very different outcomes. If a young child in the classroom who does not have the ability to control his emotions may become physical with another student, especially if that student's physical with him first. They may yell at the teacher if they get reprimanded for something. They may crumple up their paper, throw it across the room, throw their pencil across the room because they're frustrated with an activity or because they can't understand the assignment. And while emotions are automatically triggered, that's just human nature that our emotions are triggered. Our ability to regulate them then depends upon certain cognitive elements, such as having objectivity, so being able to see how big the problem is, our motivation, and our understanding of other people's perspectives. These three neurological components are important. They're integral upon each other. They're all integrated within ourselves. And if one isn't working properly, then our ability to self-regulate could be greatly diminished. So how do we teach self-regulation in the classroom? Teaching self-regulation is pretty tricky. It's not something that's easily understood, and it's not something that you can teach once and move on with. Teaching self-regulation is something that needs to be done continuously. I have been doing it in my classroom since almost day one because I've had some pretty challenging kids, and we are down to 10 days left of school, and I am still teaching self-regulation strategies. So I don't think it's something that goes away very quickly. It's important to remember that a child who is unable to self-regulate isn't just acting out. They're not just being naughty. They're displaying ineffective responses to stimuli because they don't know how else to respond to this. Thinking of self-regulation as being a skill that needs to be taught will help you in your approach to teaching it. So thinking of it as a skill rather than a misbehavior will help you realize you need to isolate the skill and then you need to practice. And sometimes you need to practice again and again and again. There's several books out there that are great for teaching self-regulation. The one book that I use a lot is called Zones of Regulation, and it is a curriculum with the same name. And basically what this book does is it assigns emotions different colors. So it focuses on teaching a child how to recognize what emotion they may be experiencing at the time, and then what the appropriate response would be to that emotion. And like I said, it assigns colors to all the emotions. So green is calm. Green is you're ready to learn, you're ready to work. Green is where we would like to be at. Yellow means you're starting to lose some control. You still got control, but you are starting to lose it. Red means that you have lost all control of your body, all control of your emotions, and you may be acting out in really inappropriate ways. So screaming, yelling, hitting. And then there's also blue. Blue means you are feeling down. So you could be sick, you could be sad, you could be tired, you could be bored. It's important to teach students that it's okay to be on any color, and that most of us go through these colors maybe several times a day. I mean, and even teachers, it's okay to be on these colors. Sometimes I come into work feeling pretty red, but obviously I know how to regulate that, and I know how to get myself back into green, or at least yellow, and at least enough to function throughout the school day. And you know, a lot of kids think that it's bad to be on red, or it's bad to be on blue, and it's important to let them know that no, it's okay. It's okay to feel red. What's not okay is to feel red and take it out on other people. You know, what's not okay is to completely lose control and hit our friend, or, you know, throw a pencil at our teacher, or scream and yell at somebody. Teaching self-regulation, I think, means teaching acceptable alternatives to unacceptable actions. Providing students with a choice board is, I found to be really handy, really helpful for them. Sometimes they don't know how they're feeling, and so you have to do a lot of scaffolding with them. You have to guide them, you know, oh, I see that, you know, you may be feeling frustrated right now. And having a choice board then can really help them to see what emotion they may be feeling, and what are some appropriate ways to respond to that emotion. So, for example, you know, I have several different ones. This one is feeling frustrated, and I apologize that it's backwards because of how I'm recording. This is, I feel frustrated. So if you see the child's getting frustrated, you know, they are, you can see it in their faces a lot of times, or they're crumbling up their paper and throwing it, or throwing their pencil. You know, you can go up to them and say, hey, I see you're feeling frustrated. You know, let's try one of these choices here to help us get back to where we need to be. So, you know, you can fidgets, or counting down, or taking a deep breath, taking a break, something like that. If you have a student who struggles with sensory processing, then providing sensory breaks might be something that would be helpful for him or her. What's important with sensory breaks, and what's important for any of these, is to keep in mind that what works for one may not work for another. Everyone is going to react differently to different sensory activities, and so it's important to find out what is going to help your student the best. So for example, jumping on a trampoline may be calming to some kids, and that may help them come back and focus, but for others it might be alerting, and then they're going to be bouncing off the walls, and even worse than they were when you started. Students who like deep pressure, one student may like that. They might like to be squeezed or have their shoulders pressed down, and that's calming for them. For other students, being touched like that may be uncomfortable for them, and it would make things worse. So it's important to find out what is going to help your student. And sometimes you can try asking your student what they feel like they need. I think that kids, once you start teaching this, and once they kind of get the hang of it, they know what's going to help them. They know that they don't like to be touched, so, no, deep pressure is not going to help me. Or they know that, if I go and I jump on the trampoline, or if I ride the scooter board up and down the hallway a few times, I know that's going to help me focus and get back to where I need to be. So the goal is to help the student learn his emotions well enough so that he'll know what and how to use things around him to get him back where he needs to be. Another great resource I use is called The Kid's Guide to Staying Awesome and in Control. And this book was written with 7 to 14-year-olds in mind, so it's very simple writing, and I find this helps parents a lot, especially parents who may not be very educated. It's broken down really nicely for them to follow. It breaks down your physical and emotional feelings into 3 categories: slow and tired, fast and emotional, and fast and wiggly. And then for each one of those categories, there's a menu of activities to choose from. So for example, if your child is feeling fast and emotional, they may appear to be hyper or stressed or worried, bothered by noises or bright lights. And one of the activities that this gives that would be helpful is something called bubble breath. So it shows how the body should be while you're doing this. It explains how to do it step by step. And what I also like about it is it tells you kind of the science behind it. So this would be helpful because getting oxygen to your brain can help you think better and make smarter choices. And it shows you how to do it. And it goes on to several different activities that you can try. It also has several tools in here that you can use to help your students. So noise reducing headphones or wiggle seats, weighted lap pads, fidgets. I have huge boxes full of we call them squishies. So just squishy toys or something that they can squeeze or pull or something like that. So having a variety of tools is really important because, like I said, what works for one may not work for another. And the more options you can offer someone, the better. I have really, really great occupational therapists in my building, and I find that they are a tremendous help on coming up with some sort of sensory break, some sensory idea for my kids. One activity I like to do with my students when I introduce self-regulation and we start talking about our emotions is to read the book Moody Cow Meditates. This is a super fun book. It's super cute. It's great. My kids really, really like it. It helps young children learn how to recognize their emotions, recognize that it's okay to have these emotions, and then it gives a couple of really good ideas on how to regulate them. So I'm going to read part of the book to you. Moody Cow Meditates. My name is Moody Cow. It used to be Peter, but now it's Moody Cow. It all started one stupid, rotten day when everything went wrong. First, I had a bad dream. A very bad dream, which involved a giant three-eyed alien. What a rotten way to wake up. I wanted to find my mom and tell her about the giant three-eyed alien, but I couldn't find her anywhere. So I admit I was in a bad mood to begin with. Then I couldn't find my skateboard. Turned out my sister had borrowed it. Okay, maybe I overreacted when I pulled her tail, but it was a brand new skateboard. So then Daisy had to get me back by tripping me on the stairs. What a monster. That made me mad. So mad that I cut her doll's hair off on purpose. Of course I got in trouble for that, which made me miss the bus. I had to ride my bike all the way to school in the snow. That made me really mad. So then it goes on to explain some of the other things that made Moody Cow mad and upset. And it all comes to a head when I did something crazy I picked up my baseball and threw it right through the window on purpose. Unfortunately, my mom saw the whole thing. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" she yelled. "Have you lost your mind?" She came outside, took one look at my super mad, rotten day face, and I guess she felt sorry for me. "Aw, are you a little moody cow?" So Mom decides to call Grandfather. Grandfather comes over and Moody Cow is explaining to him about his day, and Grandfather has an idea. "You see this?" he asked as he pointed to a jar of water. "This is your mind," he said. "And these," he held out a little dish of sparkles, "are your angry thoughts." "That," I said, "is a jar of water, and those are Daisy's fairy dust sprinkles." "Come on, Mr. Moody Cow, work with me here. Now what we're going to do is put in a pinch of sparkles for every angry thought you have. Then we're going to sit here until they all settle down to the bottom. By the time the water is clear again, your anger will have all settled down too." So Moody Cow goes through all of his angry thoughts for the day. They put in a pinch of sparkles in the jar. Grandfather put the lid on the jar. "This jar is like your mind right now," he said. "Angry thoughts bouncing around all over the place." "Now let's see what happens when we let your angry thoughts settle down," Grandfather said, putting the mind jar down in front of me. "Just sit quietly and see what happens." I sat watching all my angry thoughts swirl around like crazy in the jar. A few thoughts slowed down and sank to the bottom, then a few more, and a few more. It was so quiet I could feel my heart beating. It was so quiet I could hear my breath going in and out, in and out. I felt a ray of golden sunshine coming through the window. It warmed my back and started to melt away the last of my anger. Finally, Grandfather rang the gong to end the meditation. He leaned over to whisper in my ear, "Okay, this part's important. Don't move until you can't hear the sound of the gong anymore." I cocked my head, listening closely. The ringing got softer and softer and softer until I couldn't hear it at all. Grandfather smiled and held up the jar. "Well, look at this. All the sparkles have settled down," he said. "And my angry thoughts have too," I said. "I mean, I guess if I think about it, I could get mad again." "That's probably true," he said, "but we had to work pretty hard to settle them down. Let's not stir them all up again." So what I love about this book is Grandfather shows Moody Cow a way to handle his emotions, control his emotions, and they make what's called a mind jar, and they work on some meditation strategies like deep breathing, listening quietly, listening for the sound of your heart beating, and then at the end of it, it has instructions on how to do your own mind jar. I have a couple of these. I don't call them mind jars, I call them calm down jars, and so we have glitter in them, and you shake them up, and then you can watch as the glitter settles down to the bottom. I put clear glue in mine, and so the glue settles down, or the sparkles settle down a lot slower, and depending on how upset they are, there's different colors, depending on how upset they are. So if they are feeling red, which is, out of control, the red jar has a lot more glue, so the sparkles take a lot longer to settle down. This is something that my kids love. This is something that we love here at my house. I've got some at my house that we use. And I have one on my desk at school, and so sometimes I need to shake it up too, and then I just watch the glitter settle down, and I teach them, as the glitter is settling down, deep breath in, deep breath out. So there are tons of different ways to help teach your students self-regulation. And like I said, it's not something that you can teach once and move on from. This is something that you do day in and day out. And some days it's going to work, some days it's not. It's in the last several years, I've noticed that students, both young and old, struggle with self-regulation and coping strategies so much, and it's a growing issue, and I don't feel like it's something that's going to go away anytime soon. And we see children who struggle with this. They have issues, they have a hard time in class, and they're going to have a hard time then later on down the road in the real world. So many of their struggles manifest as behavior problems, and there are a lot of professionals out there who want to say, oh, they're being bad, they're being naughty, let's punish them. And punishing is not going to help them learn the strategies. Understanding why students act the way that they do and helping them cope with that and helping them come up with alternatives to what they're doing is going to help them more in the long run. It's going to give them strategies that they can use for the rest of their lives. And I think we as teachers, that's what we're really trying to do, is help our students become functioning, contributing members of society and get these strategies and help them so that when they are out in the real world, they are going to be okay. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you learned a little bit about what self-regulation is and how you can help your students in the classroom with strategies.